Hi, welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I wanted to do my very first dedicated review video. So usually I just do wrap-up videos and don't do separate videos discussing specific books at length. But I've been wanting to do that more lately because sometimes I want to talk about books a little bit deeper and be able to talk spoilery parts as well. So this book review is going to have a spoiler-free section and then a spoiler section. So if you haven't read this book, you can still watch this review and watch most of the video without delving into spoilers, but there will be a section where I do discuss spoilers because sometimes that greatly impacts my review and my thoughts on the book, and so I wanted to be able to talk about them for this specific book. I will have timestamps in the description so that way you can see exactly when I am talking about spoilers, and then skip over that section if you don't want any spoilers. So the book I am discussing today is Long May She Reign by Rhiannon Thomas, and this is a YA fantasy is how it's built. So this book is about Freya. Freya is a genius. She is a scientist and she's not really interested in court life or anything like that, but her father insists on her being part of court life because he was a poor merchant who married into a wealthy family, and so court life means a lot to him that he was able to integrate himself into that. Freya's mother has died, and so it's just her and her dad, but she prefers not to be around people. She has a lot of social anxiety and she would much rather be working on her experiments. But she has made a deal with her father that she goes every year to the king's birthday celebration, and that is where this book picks up. So at the king's birthday celebration, Freya stays for a bit and then has this scientific breakthrough where she has to go experiment and try out and see if this idea she just had is valid. So her and her best friends leave the banquet only to have her father rush in on them later and find out that most of the people at the banquet were poisoned and have died. Freya is 23rd in line for the throne and never ever thought she would become queen, but now she's queen because everyone else has died. So I'm gonna list off a few things I liked about this book and then a few things that I didn't like about this book. So the first thing that I loved about this book is it was not very typical of YA books. I feel like a lot of them kind of follow the same formula, have the same kind of protagonist, and I guess this does have the trope of the not like other girls trope, but Freya really isn't like other girls. So it's not like girls are like, I'm not like other girls, but like really they are. Freya is just a very different protagonist, and I love that about her. I can't remember reading another YA book that had a protagonist that was a scientist and suffered from severe social anxiety. That is just like a totally new thing for me in YA fiction. Maybe there are others like this, but this was new for me, so I really appreciated that about it, how different it was from other books that I have read. Another thing I loved about this book was the romance, mostly because the romance doesn't even show up until at least halfway through the book. So it is not a primary plot point, and I loved that. You know how picky I can be about my romances, so I was really happy to find a book where the romance is not like obsessive or super tropey or cheesy. And then when there's kisses and stuff, like some books like really detail it, and it just, I don't know, that like really turns me off because it ends up sounding kind of gross sometimes, even though they're trying to make it sound romantic. I don't know, like using words like and their tongues slipped over each other, and it's just kind of like, okay, like I don't know. That's just my personal preference. No, there are a lot of people who like details on their romance and details on like any physical aspect of the romance. That's not me. So if that is like a must-have for you for a romance, you will not enjoy that aspect of this book. Another aspect I liked about the romance is it was not insta-love. There was definitely like a development there. And Freya cracks me up because she knows so much about science but feels so awkward around people that it really takes her a long time to realize not only that this boy is interested in her, but that she is also interested in him. She's like, well, I have a kingdom to run. I have all these other things going on. And so romance is like on the back burner for her. She's like, this other stuff is more important. And I'm like, finally, what is with these people that like all the world is falling apart, but all they can focus on is a romance? That just doesn't seem very practical for me personally. Like that doesn't, or well, not practical, because romance is rarely practical even in real life, but just it doesn't seem realistic. I feel like if my whole world was falling apart, the last thing on my mind would be like hooking up with a stranger. You know, that's just not how my mind operates. Another thing I liked about the relationship in this book is communication, because so often there are miscommunications and they cause drama-filled parts of the story, and there are moments of that here, but when the two characters who are falling in love have issues with each other, you know what they do? They talk about it instead of just going further into this misunderstanding and pouting like children. They're like, you hurt me and that wasn't cool. And the other person's like, I know it wasn't right. And I know, I understand if you can't trust me now. And things like that. They actually talk about the issues they have with each other like rational human beings. And I appreciated a YA book that gave a good example of communication in a relationship. Another thing I loved about this book was strong female friendships. I love that. That was such a bigger part of this book than the romance. Freya's relationship with her best friend Naomi in this is amazing, and there's exploration of grief in here, particularly as Freya is trying to be a good friend to Naomi as she's experiencing grief, and that whole dynamic of like, well, I don't know what to say, and realizing that sitting with someone who's grieving is far more important than anything you could actually have to say to them. Okay, now some things about this book that I didn't love. So there is a religious system in this kingdom, and I've mentioned before how much I love like made up religions and stuff in books, and I felt like it was not explored well at all in this book. They worship this group of people who apparently used to rule the kingdom forever ago called the Forgotten. And then they disappeared because the kingdom was becoming increasingly wicked and violent, and they didn't like that, so they left, but they're revered as gods. And that's all we get. We don't get any more information about them or anything. It was just very lackluster, and I would rather that have not been part of the plot at all. Another thing I didn't love about this is it's billed as a fantasy, and it's not a fantasy at all. There are this many fantastical elements in this book. The only thing that is like semi-fantastical is Freya's science, which is science, but other people who don't understand science think it's magic because they don't understand how it works, and that's it. So I feel like it's misclassified in its genre. I feel like it's got like a historical, almost medieval feeling setting, but sometimes they talk very properly like you would assume people in that time period would, and then sometimes they say like, oh my gosh, or you know, Freya talking about this boy that she likes, she's like, does he like me or does he like me? And I'm like, really? We're gonna say like we're in elementary school in like the 90s? Like, this is not how people would have talked back then. So that was kind of like jarring. So I can't classify it as like historical fiction. I can't really classify it as fantasy. I don't really know what kind of a book it is. I mean, overall I did really like it, but it was just kind of weird. So here's the spoiler section. And yeah, so if you have not read this book and you want to skip this section, go down in the description below, click on the timestamp so that way you can skip forward. I will also have a spoiler thing here on the screen so that way you know that there are spoilers in this section. Okay? Ready? All right, spoilers. What the heck was up with this ending? Okay, so this whole time, Freya is not only trying to learn how to run a kingdom, but she's also trying to figure out who is responsible for poisoning hundreds and hundreds of nobility, killing the king and queen and all the successors to the throne. And then she finds out who does it, and because she has developed a friendship with this person, she does something that's completely opposite to how she's behaved throughout this book. One of the things that I admired greatly about Freya in this book is that she stood for justice and truth, and just fairness overall. So the poor people were extremely poor and the rich people were extremely rich, which is not at all abnormal in those kinds of settings. So the rich people are lavish and throw things away, but the kingdom is poor, so they have to keep taking money from the poor. And Freya realizes how completely unfair this is and how people need to be brought to justice for the way that they have been behaving. But when she finds out who kills all the nobility, she goes to them in the middle of the night, gives them a pack and says, "Run away so I don't have to punish you for what you did." Because she's friends with them. And that just made me so mad because it was the complete opposite of everything Freya had stood for. Truth and justice and fairness across the board. So that way if you're a poor person who committed a crime, you get punished. If you're a rich person who committed a crime, you don't just get off, you get punished too. You can't just pay off the king or call in a favor because you're friends with them. But then this person is friends with her and she just lets them go. Like, that is the main reason why I dropped the star rating for this book. This book was so close to like being a perfect book, and that just completely upset me. I could have done without that, to be totally honest. So how did I feel about this book overall? Overall, I really liked it, except for an element at the ending, which I talked about in the spoiler section. I think on Goodreads I gave this book 3.5 stars. It's probably more like a 4. I just got really mad about that one element in the ending. So I would say it's really a 4-star book. It was pretty good. I really appreciated the uniqueness of the protagonist and the uniqueness of the plot. How not only is this a girl trying to figure out how to run a kingdom, but she also doesn't know who she can trust because someone poisoned all these people and she doesn't know who it is. So at the same time, you're trying to figure out who is behind all of this. Is it that super shady person over there, or is this like a red herring to distract us from who it really is? And so I really, really appreciated a lot of the things that this book did. Well, that is it for this time. This is my first dedicated review video, so let me know what you thought. Let me know if you would like to see more of these dedicated reviews where I spend kind of more of a lengthy amount of time discussing just one book, or if you kind of just prefer watching wrap-ups in general. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, I would love it if you would click like and then also subscribe so we can continue to talk about awesome books together in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.